The tears, the agony, the pain, the anguish, sometimes it's just all too much. How do you deal? How do you deal with the rejection? This is a question that I get literally all the time after my last video that I put out where I was talking about why most people program themselves to fail. Somebody posted a comment underneath, and I'll read this comment for you. How doesn't all this deter, demotivate, or confuse you? How aren't you getting plagued that you're being a creep or failing hard when you're rejected? I feel like shit, to be honest, after getting rejected. Like there's no point to my existence. Like I'll never feel happy again. I take months-long breaks. Honestly, I feel there's no hope. How do you find the positive? Aren't you scared it's just going to be everyone else like that too, and you're just not valuable enough in others' eyes? Rejection is no fun, man. Well, let me break it down for you. This shit ain't for the weak of heart. You live by the sword, you die by the sword, but what's the alternative? Continue to be floating like flotsam and jetsam in a sea of life with no agency over your relationships, no agency over the people you're friends with, no agency, no ability to choose the people you date, to choose the clients that you attract, to choose the friends you have in your life. It's hoping to get lucky and attract those people, and you're like hoping that someone will come and save you. Well, that shit ain't going to happen. My success that I've had personally is far greater than 99% of the population. But those successes that I've had are still a very, very small fraction of the overall effort I've put forth, my overall approaches. And look, I worked just as hard on the interactions that didn't close as the ones that did. In many cases, probably harder. How do I maintain a positive attitude in the face of that? Well, I sustain a positive attitude through the expectation of a negative result. I assume it's going to fail. I assume they aren't going to like it. I assume I'm going to get rejected. Now, this doesn't mean that you feel you can't close. It just means you feel you probably won't close. No matter how well prepared you might be, only a small percentage of deals actually close. And that's due to an endless number of factors that are mostly out of your control. That's why at the beginning of boot camp, I always ask my clients, what does the term outcome independence mean to you? And they'll usually say something like, well, it means I don't care about the outcome. Like, well, you just repeated what I said to you. But yes, but let's refine that down a little bit more. For our purposes, what it means is you're not looking to other people's reactions as a metric of success or failure. You might say, well, shit, that seems like a pretty good fucking metric. If they liked it, it worked. If they didn't like it, it didn't work. But why is it a bad metric? There are so many factors that you don't know going in. There's too much randomness. You don't know who you're approaching. You have no idea. You could just be going up to somebody and they're just simply not in the mood to talk to anybody at all. You can be approaching somebody, you know, their husband's right there. You're going to be approaching a client. They just lost their job. They're completely broke. You can't tell that just by looking at somebody. So again, in order to develop that independence from the outcome, you got to focus on metrics or criteria for success that are completely within your control and internal. And as long as you've done the things that you're supposed to be doing, you consider that a success. You chalk it up as a success, and then you chalk up the fact that it didn't close to the game. The only way to avoid having your ego, your self-belief, your self-image shattered into a billion pieces and scattered to the wind is to be mature and rational enough to acknowledge the reality that the vast majority of deals do not close. And beyond that, it's an absolute requirement that you cultivate a very high sense of self-esteem. Now, many years ago, I had a bit of a come to Jesus moment with regard to this because I was put on blast in the media for various unsavory things, some jokes that I made regarding my mode of transportation. A lot of people were saying a lot of things about me that were not very nice. And so I had to come to a point where I began to really value my opinion of myself more highly than the opinion of others. But you can only do that if you're living up to certain standards that you've developed for yourself. And, you know, I think that everybody should read the book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden, where he outlines various practices that you can engage in on an ongoing basis to cultivate a higher sense of self-esteem. And why is it so important that you have that? Because if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to congruently sell what you're putting out there, whether that's yourself for a romantic encounter, whether that's your services in your business, if you don't believe that that's going to be a good experience for them, then you're not going to be able to congruently sell whatever you're putting out there. And furthermore, and more germane to what we're talking about here, if they reject it, you're going to be all butthurt about it. And you're going to make this big story about what it means about you and your life and your level of attractiveness and your worth as a fucking human being. If you have a very highly developed sense of the value proposition for the other people, then if they don't want it, you're not going to take that to heart. You're going to be like, okay, it's not for them. I have long ago, I had to arrive at the conclusion that yes, I'm for some, not for others. Not everybody has to like me, but the people that do are going to have a great time. So for me, it's not some referendum on my worth as a human being anymore. I'm just trying to find the people that I have chemistry with. That's all it is. And I'm not begrudging others for not loving me. I don't love everybody. Why should everybody love me? Say that to yourself right now. You don't like everybody. Why the fuck should everybody like you? What makes you so special that everybody in the world has to like you? Well, that only matters if you don't like yourself. So again, very, very crucial to all of this is putting in the work over time to develop a very highly developed sense of self-esteem, living consciously, accepting yourself, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness, living with purpose, and living with integrity. And when you first start trying to do those things, they're going to be difficult at first, much like physical exercise is if you've never gone to the gym. But over time, it'll get a lot easier, and then you'll start to really develop that, again, strong sense of self that renders you immune to the rejection. That's the point where you will no longer see rejection. You will simply see lack of chemistry. And it won't be some little thing you're saying. It'll be true. It'll be down to the core, a belief down to the core. Because I'm sure many of you watching this are like, I understand that logically, but I don't believe it down to the core. And that's where the self-esteem comes in. But ultimately, again, you sustain a positive attitude through the assumption that it's probably not going to close. Now note, this mentality only works if you're actually prepared to succeed, not if you're out there looking for excuses to fail. I'd say about 50% of my clients, they don't even want to succeed. And when success is literally put in front of them on a platter, they will find some reason to fail. I gave the example of some student who everything was going very well for him. He met this young lady, they hit it off, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, he just comes back to me in the bar. He walks away from her, he comes back to me in the bar. I'm like, did you get blown out? He's like, no, it was going well. I'm like, I saw that. Well, why are you here? He's like, I don't know. I needed to get my drink. What is this, drink camp? I thought it was boot camp. Like what? Something knocking the boots and not knocking back drinks. He's looking for an excuse to fail. And many people are like this. There's an old movie, a favorite of mine, actually, a classic from 1964 called The Hustler that illustrates this concept very, very well. And this stars Paul Newman as Fast Eddie Felson, a pool shark. The movie opens with Eddie finding this guy, Minnesota Fats, who's played by Jackie Gleason. He's the best pool player in America, and he wants to beat this guy. So over the course of the night, he plays him, and he ends up beating him pretty soundly. He has him on the ropes. And here's what happens.
That's good.
How much we got?
11,400 cash. Here and in my pocket.
Preacher, go on down, get me some breakfast, will you? An egg sandwich and a cup of coffee.
You're coming with me, or you're going to eat breakfast at the hotel. The pool game is over.
No, it isn't, Charlie.
You wanted 10,000, you got 10,000.
I came after him. The game is not over until Minnesota Fats says it's over. Is it over, Fats? I'm gonna beat him, mister. I beat him all night, and I'm gonna beat him all day.
Right there. Right there is when he knows.
I'm the best you ever seen, Fats. I'm the best there is. Even if you beat me, I'm still the best.
Stay with this kid. He's a loser.
What did he say?
So obviously this is a fictional movie, but it's something that I've seen play out in real life with my clients many, many times. So George C. Scott there plays Bert, the manager at Minnesota Fats. And you can see at that point when he's like, we're going to go all day. I'm going to go till I beat him. And you can see that little wavering in his eyes. And then when he says, even if I lose, I still beat him. And at that point, he realizes he's envisioning himself losing. So he's like, yo, go for it, Fats. This guy's a loser. Take him out. And he ends up losing all the money. Like in today's money probably be like $100,000, and he just like loses it all. He basically, what happens is he gets drunk as fuck, and Fats is just like sipping on it, and he gets drunk as fuck, and he just completely loses all his money, and he's tapped out, and he goes home defeated. A little bit later, he actually runs into the manager for Minnesota Fats in a bar, and they sit there and they have the following exchange.
All right, if I get personal, Eddie, you're a born loser.
What's that supposed to be?
First time in 10 years I ever saw Minnesota Fats hooked. But you let him off. I told you I got drugged. You got drunk. You have the best excuse in the world to lose. The trouble losing when you got a good excuse. Winning. That can be heavy on your back, too, like a monkey. Drop that load, too, when you got an excuse. All you got to do is learn to feel sorry for yourself. Sport enjoyed by all, especially the born loser.
Thanks for the drink.
So again, the only way to deal with rejection and avoid having your ego blasted into smithereens and circling the drain of despair and going into deep depression about all this shit is to acknowledge the reality. Have the maturity to acknowledge that most of the time, you're not going to close. And that's fine. However, this mentality only works if you're actually prepared to succeed, not if you're looking for an excuse to fail. So ask yourself right now. In fact, don't ask yourself right now. Ask yourself when you're out there. What am I looking for an excuse to fail? And that can be like, oh, I got to wake up early. Oh, I got to get my drink. One of their knees is slightly bigger than the other. X, Y, Z. Oh, well, you know, this, that, the next thing. Shut the fuck up. Are you there to close? Are you there to pull the trigger? Are you there to make it happen? Are you there to sign the deal? Are you there to go home with someone and get intimate? Or are you there to practice and mentally jerk off and then feel sad for yourself when you failed and reinforce how unfair everything is? Shut the fuck up. Don't play yourself into a winning position and then cheat yourself out of victory because of some underlying psychological issue that you're unaware of. This is why it's so important that you develop self-awareness. You go through life not in this like walking daze, but you live consciously and really ask yourself, what am I here for? If it's not to close, then you're not gonna. Self-esteem has two defining characteristics. Number one is the belief that you deserve the things that you want in life. You believe you deserve it. Number two, you believe that you can handle the challenges that are going to be thrown in your way as you pursue those goals. In other words, you deserve it and you can handle it. If you come on a boot camp with me, you're going to be surrounded by people with high self-esteem, myself, my assistants, by real closers, and we're going to drill that mentality into you until you see that not only is it possible for you to win, it's not even that difficult when you get out of your own way. I'm going to be all over the United States this year. I'm going to Europe in June. I'm going to be in Berlin, Amsterdam, London, and Stockholm. So click the link in the description below. Maybe I'll see you there. This has been Jeffy, signing off. God bless you.